Okay, so what I'm going to talk about and where you, if you're connected to the Hangout afterwards, can do some hands-on experience is the Hangouts API. I talked a little bit about it yesterday, only shortly, so I'm going to rehash some of the most important things before we get started with the actual code. So, I don't know how many have been in my talk yesterday? Oh, you haven't. Okay, so something new from someone. So what an Hangout app is, if you look at it, it's just you have inside of your Hangout you have an iframe, and in this you can run any web application actually. And then you have some APIs to communicate with the outside of the Hangout, and you have ways to react to events that are outside of your Hangout, and you have ways to communicate between the participants of a Hangout. So the way it looks like, you first define your Hangout in form of an XML file, where you define your Hangout name. You have to require the features RPC and views, which allow you the communication between the inside iframe and the outside of the Hangout. Then you probably would like some sort of style sheet. You need the JavaScript for the Hangouts API, which includes all the functions you're going to call. And then you can define the way your HTML looks like for the web application, and then you probably have some script where all the work is being done. And if you look at an empty Hangout application like this, it will look like, let's see, I have a template here. So you see, this is actually, this white frame here is actually the Hangout application. And if we just inspect element, so you see we are inside of an iframe here, inside of the whole structure of the source. And if you look at if you want to debug something inside of a Hangout, because that's actually the easiest way to participate with the Hangout, is the first thing you have to note that because we are inside of an iframe, we actually have to switch our context to this SketchUp iframe. So we can do stuff with the API, and when I'm inside the right context I can call it a guppy.hangout, and inside here I have the whole functions which I can access inside of the Hangout. So as you can see, you have, for example, you can get the list of participants, you get local participant, you have all sort of sub namespaces. For example, you have the data where you can exchange data. I'm going to go into more detail for each of these a little bit later. So actually what I can already do here, I can make calls to the API. So for example, I can do Hangout, baby.hangout, get participants. And in this case, at the moment it's only me in here. So I think I invited 2 of you to the Hangout, so if you want to join, if you see the invitation. Did you get the invitation to the Hangout? Class?
My MacBook crashed just before.
Oh yeah, there's a new one here. Can I just ask you to mute your sound so we don't get feedback? And so you see, in this case I have registered some event procedures already, so I have the participants changed event here. And if I look at here, I see, okay, and in this case I have an object which already has, in this case I think the first one is still me, and then the second person in here is Jean-Marie. So you see, in this case, when you look at the information you can get about the participants, you have the display index in here, which basically is just the order in which the people are displayed down here, so it's 1, 0. So this one isn't a fixed ordering, it depends on each person. It can be different for different participants, so you can use this as a unique identifier. You have, what's probably most important, you have the unique participant ID, which you can use to request more information about the participant. Like you can get volume label if people are talking. You can actually decide that you don't want to see this person, so you can mute other persons, and you can define, you can lower the volume of other persons, especially if you have a hangout with people who have very different audio levels. You can, for yourself, decide, okay, I'm gonna lower one down so I have a more equal experience.
If I'm a master, can I set the levels for all or just for me?
So actually there is no master. If you're doing a Hangout on air and you're the broadcaster, you can actually define the volumes you define will be the ones that end up in the audio, in the video stream. And actually if you're a broadcaster, you see there's actually flags here for is broadcaster, which is true for you if you're hosting the Hangout on air. And then you have this flag, is in broadcast. So you can actually define which people appear in the Hangout on air. So if people are joining, you can just set this to false in previous, and then you can just bring people in and out for your broadcast. So, but this is only if you're doing a Hangout on air. And yeah, in the person you see you have details about the some basic information about display name. You have the Google Plus ID, which you can use to access more profile information about the person, and you have the avatar image theoretically. It should be here, but it isn't. Okay. It seems there's some. Let's try. Oh, okay, because it seems my. Oh, okay. Oh, my Hangout crashed. Yeah, now you have the avatar image in there as well. If you want to use it in some way, you can use this image. For example, if you have an application you want to indicate the person who is currently acting, you can use the image to display it somewhere in your application. So one difference is the first decision you actually have to make when you decide on making a Hangout application is if you want to make it a main application, which in this case covers the whole frame, or if you just want to make it an extension. I'm just going to show you an example. An extension in this case just runs here in a side frame, and you still have, for example, the main video running. So let's see. So the first thing you need to do in your script actually is that you have to wait for the on API ready event. So this just tells you, okay, everything is prepared, I can get access to the participants, I have access to the shared state, I have access to everything, I can start using the API really. So this is the first call you want, event procedure you want to call, and when after the event is called you can start using the application. And so for example, as we've already seen, you can access the participants with the gabi.hangout.getParticipants, and then usually for all the things you see in the Hangouts API you have events. So if participants leave, participants join, things change, people turn on the microphone, turn off the microphone. You have all sorts of different events you can register for these. You can also register if people start your application, people leave your application, or people leave the Hangout altogether. So as you can see, there's a whole list of different events you can register, and you can also only request the list of people who are actually using the application at the moment. And so you have also in the, I think it's the, is it the layout? This chat possible is. So you can actually also see if somebody switches on the chat frame, you can actually register, because those are events which potentially resize your app window. So those, probably when you write a Hangout application, you have to take much care to make it dynamic, because you can never be sure how big your window will be. So there are some minimum sizes you can rely on. I'm at the moment not quite sure what they are. But for example, the Hangout extension will always have a width of 300 pixels, and the minimum height I think of also I think like 400 pixels, and so I can look up the values later and put it on into my documentation so you can see the minimum values. So what I did to actually make coding or starting coding with the Hangouts API easier, I created something called the Hangouts API Playground. This is a thing where I make sure I register quite a few of events. I enable you to write code and actually execute code to the console, to the Gabi Hangout. So you don't have to switch between the console and the code all the time. You can just do the coding in here, execute it and see what happens. And so I know it's evil, it uses evil, but in the end you can do exactly the same thing just by going into the console and executing code there. So I thought you only have your own computer by that. So what we see here, we have, for example, we have the shared state. So the shared state is probably one of the most interesting features for Hangouts application, because the shared state allows you to communicate between the participants and make sure everyone sees the same thing. Because in the shared state it's just an object really. You can define key value pairs which you put into the shared state, and this shared state will be visible to all people who are using your application. So for example, I can do I hope it's big enough up there. Is the code visible enough, or should I zoom in? Okay. So for example, I can call the gabi.hangout.data.setValue. And just set my key 1 to value 1. And I do an execute. And you see, in this case, you have again you have an event which you can register for when the shared state changed, and you get, in this case, I'm just putting the values in here. So those are actually, if I just go ahead and I'm just gonna close the application. I'll close this one as well. Oh, it seems. And if I open it up again, you see the shared state is still the same as before. This also happens if I just go ahead and refresh the whole Hangout window, because my computer crashed or something and I want to rejoin the Hangout. So I'm just gonna make a refresh here. Wait. And try in, and when I open the application again, that shared state is still there. So that's a way you can preserve your state to make sure that even if crashes happen, you can still, for example, if you're in a game of chess with someone, if you program a chess game, and somebody drops out and comes back in again, you still have the same state. Of course, if both persons leave and it's a new Hangout you start, you won't have the state anymore. But as long as you're in the same Hangout session, the shared state for your application gets preserved. So, and as you can see, I can also just add, I'm just going to add another value here. Okay. There's no method, so I need the gabi.data execute. And I have added another one, and see this procedure is asynchronous, so you have to actually wait for the onState changed event to happen before you can read the value again. So you can't just write it in and be sure that, know that it's there, you have to wait for the onState change then. If we just take a look, so as you can see, you can use the setValue function. What you can also do if you want to do batch updates of multiple values, another call you can do is the setDelta. And in this request, I just define an object of values I want to update, or so I'm just gonna update the key 2 to value 3. I'm gonna add a new key 3, value 2, just to make things confusing. And then I'm deciding I also want to delete, so I have a second parameter which is an array of values of keys I want to delete from the shared state. And I'm just going to delete the key 1 in this case. And execute, and if all goes well.
Value 2 is missing.
I think I have submit delta.
Next line.
Oh, Oh, thanks. No, that one's this one. No, not that. Oh, actually it happened already. I didn't see it now. The key 1 is gone. The key 2 is value 3 and the key 3 is value 2. So, and one important thing also to note about the shared state is you can see it's very easy to manipulate. You just have to go into the console if you know what to do, and then you can just write into the shared state what you want or delete values. So if you're really writing critical applications like games, okay, no, games aren't critical. But for example, for games, if you keep your score in here, then people can just go in and overwrite their own score. So it's easy to cheat, but then again, you can probably add some methods, so sharing the on an external server and checking back to something to make sure people aren't cheating. But then again, if people cheat too much, people won't play with them anymore, so it's actually self-regulating in some. And of course, if some sort of money gets involved, then you might want to rely on some more secure system than the shared state. So one way you can go so that you know who has written the value. You can actually define your values. You can just add the participant ID, for example, do your key value, so that you know that everybody has their own shared state in some sense, and they always check for the participant ID. But then again, you can just write the value into the shared state with a different participant ID as well, so that's also not secure.
Question. Yes. So let's say you are the only one in the Hangout and you prepare the shared state.
Yes.
And your browser crashes or your computer crashes. Everything is gone then when you restart, right? Because you're the only one in the Hangout?
Yes, except if you see if the Hangout actually has ID, unique. Yeah. So if there's a certain timer, if nobody is in the Hangout after a certain while, this session will expire. Okay. But if you're quick enough to get back in, so I think it's a couple of minutes you have time to get back with the same ID if you still have it. Okay. But of course, what you can do with the shared state, because we are all JavaScript based, you could, for example, write it to local storage or into cache or in some sort of. If you want something you want to preserve, you have to rely on another service than the Hangout. So what I've seen people do, some people who keep it either in local storage if they want to preserve the state for other Hangouts, or they use Google Cloud Storage or Drive to save their files and then retrieve them back on a new Hangout. So, as said, from inside here you can actually do everything you would do in normal JavaScript. So you can run WebGL if you want to do WebGL games. You can do, you can do all sorts of stuff. So just gonna, let's see what we have here. Except for the shared state, you see there's a field which says received messages. So the problem with the shared state is that if you update the state, it takes quite a while for the message to arrive on the other side. So if you want to do real-time updates, there's another system which are the messages. So what those do is you send the message out and it might get lost. So it's not sure delivery and it gets received and forgotten. So the participants who receive the message see it. So what you can do with this is just as often as you can send out your current message, and for example if you have a mouse pointer location or position in somewhere you want to update regularly, you just send the message out and then the recipients can react and see, okay, he is already at this position. So for messages you get the person who sent the message and the message is just a string. So you can choose, but you can use JSON.stringify to put in every information you really want. And this is actually, especially if you're on a fast connection, those can be like 10, 20 milliseconds for arrival. So this is a really fast system. So I actually tested it with 2 computers on the same network, admittedly, and I pressed the key here, and it was like I was writing on this keyboard here, and I saw me typing in real time on the other keyboard, which was pretty. So it's really fast. So for example, what I did with this, I'm just going to show you an app. Hangout band. So this was just a fun project, I hope it's still working. So what I did with this, I did, okay, still loading. So actually what I'm doing with this is I load several sound samples on the client side and then I just send as messages, okay, this player has played this note and then the sound gets triggered on the other side, and because of the sent message it actually you can use it to play together. Actually it's still some delay sometimes, so it's not real time, and I guess the sounds take a bit too long to load on here. But I checked out drums already. Here I just made some fun stuff with CSS-free animation, so it's just a playground. I actually tested it and it actually works too with several participants that everybody plays together, so actually there should be a, yeah, you have piano here and guitar here. And so that was just a fun project, and this one actually uses send messages extensively for each sound you play. It sends a message and then it plays on the client side. Because the problem is several people have tried to use Hangouts as jam sessions, but then you always have the audio delay between participants. You can't really play together, and that's just a dirty workaround. It isn't the same thing, but it's still fun to play with it sometimes. So, back to the playground. So let's see, we have the shared state, we have the, I can't show you the messages right now because those are only, even if I send a message it only gets received by the others. I don't receive the message myself. But that's a very useful thing, especially if you have like real-time games. So I actually use it also in like some 3D virtual room where people are walking around. You can update the position in real time. So let's see. Let's just switch over. Where's the console? Wrong brain again. So that's one thing you have to remember, that it's really that you have to switch to the next brain if you want to test things. So let's see, you have an audio video where you can actually set your camera and microphone to mute. As you can see, you can set you can get and set the participant audio level, which I was talking about before, that you can lower the volume of other participants. You can get the volumes. This is actually, they have the volumes on a 1 to 5 scale. So if people are talking and not talking, you'll see. You can actually use this for some fun animations like talking heads and. Let's see, as camera you see have all those events. Even if I mute my camera, I can get an event and react to it accordingly. Like, I don't know, so you have all sorts of things you can query for. Actually more fun in this, you have the audio video effects, which allows you to create image and audio resources which you can then play on events, which so those are actually handled via the Google Talk plugin. So they filter out echoes if echoes happen, and for the image resources you can do overlays over your image. So for example, let's create a static overlay. I'm just gonna copy the code into an editor to make it easier to see. Actually, I think I have it on a slide. Let's see, shared state, messages, overlays. Okay, yeah. So what you do, first you create your image resource from a URL. Then from this resource you can either create a static overlay or a face tracking overlay, and then you can set some parameters like the scaling, where it's positioned, and then you can just set it visible, and when you're done with it you can dispose of it to free up memory, or you can just set it to set visible to false. And if I just execute this code here, nothing happens. No. That's just. So as you can see, okay, the video quality is rather bad at the moment. This will create a static overlay, and as you can see, actually it's mirrored, because per standard, if I have a video, see my own video stream, it will always appear mirrored to myself. because it's the more natural behavior, so that I move actually when I see my face, I don't want it moving right when I move left. But actually, if you will see overlays, especially if you have text in overlays, it might get more confusing than the mirrored image. So they actually added a call recently to the API, which allows me to, let's see if I can get it, audio video set, participant video mirrored. So the standard is, it's mirrored, that's the standard, so if I set it to false, it will actually, now it's the right way around. But if you look at the screen now, it's just, for me, it's moving in the wrong direction. But you can do this, for example, if you just want to preview, like if you have a lower third application and you want to preview if the text appears correctly, then you can just mirror it once and mirror it back, so when you're sure it's correct. Okay, how do I get rid of this? Let's just... So one thing, if you play around with this, you have to make sure that you actually save your variables in the global space, because otherwise you won't be able to get rid of them afterwards, except for refreshing. So that's why I have created this window.myImageResource, and so I can dispose of it afterwards. So that's just for this special case if you're playing around with this. Of course, if you do it in your own code, you don't need to do that. But just in this special case, and now as another example, you can also do the same for a face tracking overlay. I'm just going to show you. So for a face tracking overlay, you can actually define where you want the feature attached to, so you can nose, eyes, mouth, lips, ears. You can also make offsets from this position. So if you just create this face tracking overlay, you see I now have the logo on my fixed to my forehead. I'm just gonna make it up. There you go. And see, it's still a little bit laggy, so it will always.
Can you be a hand for you?
So it's actually, the face recognition is actually pretty good. So it's, but you see it's still a little bit lagging behind, but that might just be my slow computer at the moment. So it's, and I just switch this back and yeah, so they have this whole, let's see, they have this whole Google Effects app, where they have all sorts of different overlays. Yeah, they have sounds in here, so you have sounds which you can play as well, and you have props, and then you have beards, and you can add glasses to my, if it works. I'm frozen. Oh no, there we go. So that's actually, you can do lots of fun stuff with it, especially also if you're doing games, you can like signify different people in the game with different characters, and I think I'm just gonna get rid of the GDG logo. So for example, and you actually, as you can see in this frame here below, you actually have access to the raw data of the face tracking information, which you can use. So you have, you see what you get left eye, left eyebrow. You actually get the outside and the inside of the eyebrow. So they actually drag in quite a few information. You get lower lip, mouth center, mouth left, mouth right, nose root, nose tip, right eye, upper lip. And then you also get information about pan, roll, tilt, which is, I'm actually at the moment not quite sure. I think it's pan if you move like this, and then you have tilt and roll. And I tried to figure out once, it's not quite clear which is which, but so actually some Googler did a very funny application for this, just to show how well it works. Yeah, it's just, it actually uses the face tracking information. I think it's also using the audio volume, which I'm talking with, to actually move the mouse. So if I talk loud, we'll open the mouth, and yeah. So that's actually, and what he's doing in this application, because the face tracking is actually quite jumpy between different events you register. So what he does, he caches the last 5 results and then does an average above them, so it gets a smoother operation. Because otherwise it would be quite jumpy. And for example, where I used it, where is it? Do I have it still here somewhere? So actually I think I used it in here. So you can actually use this in some way for, let's see if this works. There we go. Let's just. So actually, if there are more participants, you would have the other androids walking around as well. So what I did here, I activated also face tracking. So if I just look straight for a moment and activate face tracking, then I can just look left and look right and look up and down. And I think I'm not sure now. I haven't. No. So actually, what you can do, you can, because you can calculate the distance between 2 points, and if the distance between 2 points gets large, you can actually calculate the distance and then make him move. But I didn't implement it in this case. So yeah, so that's just a fun application. This also uses the real-time send messages, so you can see the others walking around as well, and you can do stuff like this, and turn your head and turn around, and yeah. Just a fun thing it did. So this is actually, it doesn't use much of the Hangouts API per se, it just uses WebGL in there, and then I'm using the send messages to synchronize the state, but all the other rendering is done just inside, so it doesn't really use much of the Hangouts API, but because you have other people in there walking around, and then especially you can just change, make a long under and thin under it, and yeah, you can just do fun stuff and then play around. And oh, you can jump as well, but yeah. So that's just some things you can do. As you see, you can just put something in there and then add some sort of interactivity, and then you already have a Hangout application, really. So let's see, what do we have here? So this application is public. I will give the link out later, because I see not many people are actually on a computer right now. But you can use this application to actually get to know the different calls and play around with them. So for example, you can also, which is basically interesting if you have like a full screen application like this, but you still want to display people talking, what you can do is you can display the video stream, so you can get the video canvas, and you have to absolutely position this one with a width and a position, and when you execute this you actually get the video overlay, and you can actually decide which person appears in this canvas, so you can fix this on a certain person, or you can just use the standard person who's currently talking. So this is especially important if you want somehow to, if you have like a poker game with a person who's just playing, you want to display him so people can see if he has a nice poker face or something, or if, for example, there are some guys who are working on a tabletop forge. Anybody heard of that one? So it's a tabletop game in a Hangout. So it's really, you can import your map, you can roll dice, so it has dice algorithms. You can actually roll 7-sided dice if you want, if you need them, which is impossible in a real game. And also in this case, you always have like the person whose move is you see his video stream, and you actually have an integrated chat function. So they did this as a Kickstarter project, and they are quite good on the way. So there's some amazing things people are doing with Hangouts already now. And I'm just going to set the video frame to false. Let's see if I have that. There's one more example I have here, which just shows I can just directly access if I want to set my camera to mute, so I can just black out or mute myself. So there are actually quite a few things you can have access to. There are some more things you can do when you're in a Hangout on Air. As I said, you can decide who's visible in the Hangout on Air. You can actually get the direct link to the YouTube video if you're in Hangout on Air, if you want to share it somehow. And yeah, so what I'm going to just show you, so all this information I have on this website. Wait, I think I have the so it's the allnightplus.com/devfest. I'm gonna post it to the event in a bit. And if you go here, you have the Hangouts API examples, and then you can here actually start the Hangout API playground. Directly it will reinstall the app for you. So the biggest problem with Hangouts apps at the moment is that there's no easy way to find them, because the only way you share them is via a link which will start the Hangout and start the app for you. So if you take a look at the address, you see this is just the beginning here up to Hangouts underline. It's just a normal URL to start the Hangout, and then you can give your app ID behind to actually start the app when the Hangout starts. And this is actually the only way you can show people your app. The other way is if you're inside the Hangout with people, they will see, for example, which apps I'm running at the moment. So either you will get to see the Hangout apps from other people, or you just have to publish your link and make sure to get it out there somehow. So there's one unofficial directory which tries to collect, which is hangoutapps.com. So this is an unofficial directory where you can submit your, where did it go? Where you can submit your applications, and they will just list them, and then you see here you have again a button which opens the Hangout with the app in it. We'll see if we find anything interesting in here. So there's the tabletop forge. This is the one which I'll talk about, which is for the tabletop gaming. This one's the so there's quite a few different apps in here, and then there are also some standard apps that Google offers, like you can have docs integration where you can collaborate with people on the same document inside of a Hangout. You have the YouTube viewing app where you can just watch videos with friends. And so I think so. What I'm just shortly going to show you is actually just the basic layout for a Hangout app, which is the empty app I showed you earlier. So as I said, you have just the XML file, already explained this one, where you just have the link to your CSS, you have the link to the JavaScript library, and you have a link to your JavaScript file. And in this case, in the template, what I'm doing here, I'm waiting for the onAPI ready function, and if the API is ready, I'm actually starting my app, and in here I only register 2 events for when the state changed and when participants changed, because those are probably the 2 most important events you want to capture. And then you can just start from this template and add functions as you go along and add HTML. So you actually could create all your HTML and JavaScript as well if you want just some DOM elements in them. And one problem is the Hangouts, they are running on a Google server. So if you have local files, and especially if you're working with WebGL, you will get running the project with a lot of textures from your own server. Because of cross-origin problems, you will have troubles. And if to prevent this, you can actually, there's the Hangout iframer, which is also done by some Google developer guy. And what this does, it allows you to actually host your application on your own server. So the iframe displayed will be an iframe on your own server, so everything runs on your server. So if you fetch files, you won't have to make sure that you have the same origin policy. So this will actually, in this case, you just define a specific XML, and in this XML it forwards to an HTML file on the server, which you can then just display. But you can still use all the Hangout functionality. And I think with this, I think you should be able to write your own Hangout application. It's really easy to get started with, so you just need, just take for example the empty template and start from there and see what you can do. Or you can also have this whole demo app, the playground. I also have the source code linked. It's just a little bit longer, but in the end what I'm doing here is I also have the state changed event. In this case I'm just putting it out into a diff, and I have the participants changed event, and on message received event, so I'm only just registering some events and putting them the information out there. But in the end, you see, this is actually the whole source code for the demo app, so it's which already can do quite a lot if you write the code yourself. And actually, as you've seen, actually this script actually already, actually only need the XML to get started, because then you can go into the console and start testing your queries. So it's actually quite easy to debug Hangout applications, because you can just, if you want to test if your state changes or registers, you just push out some state change or make some random changes to your state to see how your application reacts to it. So, questions? Yeah?
If you go to the directory you had before, you find a Hangout and you launch it.
Yeah.
Can you look at the source code for that Hangout?
Actually, you can, because if I launch this one here,
yeah.
I just go to, let's inspect element, and I'm inside my iframe here, and if you look at the head, it will have probably somewhere have all the script tags included, so because it's JavaScript and web app, you can look into it. So you can actually, if you're interested in how somebody does something, you can look at it. Unless they have obfuscated it somehow, just to make it difficult. But my stuff is since it's all open source, what I'm doing, I'm not bothering with obfuscating, or I could probably minimize it to increase the loading time, but I think that it's not really that much load.
So the face recognition that's done on the video stream.
Yeah.
So the video stream goes up to the Google servers. They do the face recognition.
No, actually, I think that's something which is done in the Google Talk plugin directly on client side, I think.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure, but I think it's done client side in the Talk library, because when they introduced that feature, you needed to update your Talk plugin to make it work. So I think it has, in some way at least, it has to do with the Talk plugin. But I'm not entirely sure, to be honest.
Do you know how many people actually are using Google Plus and Hangouts and so on? Is Google publishing statistics on this? It seems like a fantastic platform for working on any sort of shared project.
So I don't know any numbers, but I know of many people who are using it. There are many professionals who are using it for news broadcasts. So actually quite a few news channels actually already using it regularly inside of TV shows, or especially for TV shows you have all the special pronounced hangouts with Obama and other politicians which they made. So they are pushing it quite a bit with famous people. So if, for example, the Google Play, they actually, I think they now have once a week a hangout with an author, an actor or something. So, and also in person, one-on-one hangouts is actually quite useful. Yeah. And I'm not quite sure how many people are using Hangout apps. I only have for some numbers for the ones I did. For example, have this comment tracker thing, which is especially for Hangouts on Air. So you can see what people are commenting on your post, so you can react to people outside of your Hangout, what to post on YouTube, and I actually have numbers where I have like around 10,000 requests per day on average now. So, and if you say they have 10 posts tracked for maybe an hour, that's 600 per. So it's probably like 50 Hangouts which are using it every day, approximately. So it's actually quite common. So if you're interested, I can show you some other applications which are out there at the moment to give you some ideas maybe. I'll see if I find anything interesting. We have the able, we have the comment tracker. So you have the, for example, the lower third application which allows you to display, especially for let's see, I'll just which basically just allows me to display an overlay, and as you can see in this case it's mirrored because it's But this is especially you can add a logo to it. So if you're really doing a news broadcast, you can add the logo of the news channel, and then you have a full low-third solution for this. So that's a very common. That's a very common one that many people use. And let's see, what else do we have here? Oh, that's a fun one. So they did this for a demo, so they had like a Google internal. Let's see if it still works. I haven't used it in for a long time. Probably it's not funded, but it's just like table football in a Hangout in WebGL, which you can play. And actually at some demo not too long ago, they showed off table tennis, where the people were playing 2 against 2 with the hats for battles. So they used face tracking to play table tennis, which looked hilarious. This one doesn't seem I just want to close this one. So this volume control app, for example, it does exactly the thing I told about, where you can control how loud people are in your response. So there's an app for that. And then you actually have an app for the apps directory, which allows you to directly start apps from the Hangout without, so you have the app directory inside, and it refreshes the Hangout, but it starts with the new Hangout. And yeah, actually, I think I showed you the most. So another one I did is the photo share, which allows you to have so you have access to your public albums, and then you can decide to show albums to your friends, and the others one will see the photos you show them. So you can search for your photos, and then decide one to. So this one actually uses the Picasso data API, because you don't have access to the photos in the Google Plus API yet. And then you can just say, and other people in the when it's low, connection's a bit slow at the moment.
So it's an app for, let's say, a whiteboard, where all people in the same Hangout can draw on the same whiteboard.
I think there already is something, at least. Let me just. I think they have it in featured actually. So they have. You see, I have Scott and Duddle, which is basically, well, it is a whiteboard, but I'm not quite sure if. Yeah, you have Kaku, which also. I'm not quite sure. I've never used it. And actually you have full drive integration, so you can actually have, if we just add this one, you can actually have all the Google Docs files, and I'm not sure if there's a drawing tool in Google Docs already.
But you can write on the same document, right? So, how that appeared?
Yeah, you can write on the document.
So that all people are typing something and it appears in the same document at the same time? Wow.
So you see, you have access to all my drive files here, and then I can just, for example, can create a shared sketchpad. Open Hangout sketchpad, and then as you can see, so you have sketchpad here, and this can be used in, and then you can save it to your Google Drive and keep it for later. So actually the person who starts the application, this will be now my sketchpad, and I give access to other people. And the thing, because it works via the Drive APIs, is if you invite people to this, they will see your email address, because that's the way the files are shared in Drive at the moment.
So it's not live for all the people, so not everyone can write, even if they have access to.
Actually, I'm not quite sure if you add and document in there. I think the other people who are using the application will get write access to the file. Okay. I think that's the way it works, but I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
But yeah, you have drawing tools here, and you have documents and spreadsheets, everything you have in. Yeah. Let's see, anything else? Yeah, so they have some games in here as well, and some Google Earths and panorama stuff, but yeah, I think that's about it. And then, as I said, there's the whole Hangout apps directory with some more stuff in here. And yeah, and the rest of the apps are up to you to write.